Hey everyone, welcome back to WCB Jazz Vinyl. Believe it or not, this is my first new arrivals video in like 3 months. And guess what? I've had a lot that's come in over those 3 months. Today, I just want to talk about really what's come in probably over the last month or so. Yeah, I think it's going to be pretty exciting because I got some rare stuff. I've got like a big box in from Japan that had a bunch of interesting titles, including some on Three Blind Mice, which is a label that I'm super passionate about. I actually even got a couple of books that came in that are jazz specific, and you all know I love talking about jazz history. So that's what we're going to cover. Before we dive in, as always, hit like, hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and you can follow me on Instagram at what_can_brown. All right, so the first one we're going to cover is definitely one of the highlights. So this is Art Taylor's Tenors. So this is like one of 2 records that Art Taylor put out as a leader for sort of the prestige new jazz label. So there's this one, and then there was Taylor's Wailers as well, right? So yeah, super excited to get this in. I had actually had a G+ copy for years, and I just thought, you know what, in this day and age, I'm never going to be able to upgrade it. This one came up, and actually it was for a great price. So what do I mean when I say a great price? It's for like 200 and I think 20 is what the asking price was. But this is one of those titles just impossible to find. I did already have a copy that I was able to sell off in order to help fund this purchase. So that helped considerably because I actually just sold that on eBay for like, I don't know, like 100 or something like that. There's like one copy on Discogs of this record for, what does it say? It's going for like over $800. I don't think that that's actually the market price, but in any event, very excited to get in a so much cleaner copy. This is like VG++ or so. Also, as you can tell right there, it is it's a not for sale or promo copy, which is kind of fun. So it really is a great bunch of tracks on this album that I think makes the music so great. There is an original by Art Taylor, but otherwise we have 2 by Thelonious Monk, including Straight No Chaser. There's one by Charlie Rouse, one by Walter Davis, right? So these guys are in the lineup, and then you also have one by Jackie McLean, which is kind of fun on this thing. So in a recent video, I talked about the latest Doug Watkins release for in the Tone Poet series, which is on the Transition Records label. And I mentioned in that video that there's really just the 2 records that Doug Watkins put out as a leader. So there's Watkins at Large, and then there was Soulnik. So this has Doug Watkins in a quintet format. It's also released on New Jazz. So these two that I'm showing you up front have a little bit in common. You also have Yusef Lateef on this, Hugh Lawson, Herman Wright, and Lex Humphreys. So I already had a copy of this as well. And again, my copy was not in the best shape. And also, I want to say it was on recycled vinyl. So actually, I've already sold off the duplicate of this, and I'm trying to remember the exact details. But this is an interesting title in terms of trying to find an original. So there's like a variety of different ones you can get. There's like deep groove, there's like narrow deep groove, there's wide deep groove, there's no deep groove. There's some of these that are on recycled vinyl, right? And so you get this like this noise floor, which is really annoying. I've had at least 3 copies, if not 4 of these over the years. And this is the first time that not only was I able to kind of address some of these issues in terms of like what's the real original, which I don't care about as much. It was more about finding a super clean copy so that I could actually enjoy playing it. And I've finally done that. So I'm really excited. And just to maybe give you a little bit more detail on in terms of what I mean in terms of like how to identify an original. So first of all, laminated cover. If you look at the back, this is kind of what it looks like, right? Some of the new jazz titles would have like kind of different things up here. Sometimes a price. Sometimes you'd see like an RW stamp, which was one of the indicators of possibly it being a reissue. And it's unclear what the RW means. Some people think it means record withdrawn, and some people think it's Bob Weinstock or Robert Weinstock's initials that they had for some reason. I think it's probably record withdrawn. But in any event, what you can see here, if it's possible to get a good look at this label in the camera, is that it is the wide deep groove, and that's kind of what I was after. Not specifically because I wanted the wider deep groove versus the narrow, because I really don't care. It's just that I was super focused on trying to find a copy that again was not on recycled vinyl and that wasn't going to have some of those pressing flaws. And just my experience with records that were released with wide, but you could also get narrow deep groove, is that the narrow ones were much more likely to have that recycled vinyl issue. So again, these first 2 are like some of the highlights of this entire list. Super excited to finally fill some of these gaps, I guess, with like clean copies. All right, so this next one up is a little bit of an interesting story in terms of why I actually came across this album. So this is an album that I didn't even know existed. Never come across it, never paid attention to it, and honestly, if I saw it in the bins, I probably still wouldn't pay attention to it. So the other day, somewhat recently anyway, in the last like couple of weeks, I just went online and I asked like Bing AI, like whatever Microsoft is using in their Bing search engine. I don't normally use Bing. It's just I was on my work computer and that's the default. And anyway, I asked the search engine, what are the most underrated jazz albums of all time? And it spit out an answer. And I don't know where it pulled this from, right? It could have been somebody else's list. In fact, it probably was, or it's possible it was trying to aggregate from a number of places. I never checked the sources, but I was just super interested to see this album appear on what AI thought was the most underrated or one of the most underrated jazz albums. So it was Gary McFarland Orchestra with, this is important, special guest soloist Bill Evans. See, the Bill Evans part, that's the reason why I would stop if I was flipping through the bins and I came across this. I'd be like, wait a second, what is that and why is Bill Evans on it? So I have a problem kind of with Gary McFarland, not across the board though. So he actually has at least one really, really good album for Impulse, and I think it's called Point of Departure. I think that's what it is. And that one's excellent. Like it's not even excellent for a Gary McFarland record. It's just excellent. Like people ignore that one too. I personally think that if I was going to make a most underrated jazz album list, that would at least be shortlisted. It'd be somewhere in there. So anyway, but the other side of Gary McFarland's work is this super 60s like choir kind of I don't even know. It's not like spoken word, but it's a lot of like singing like doo-dah, like that kind of thing over instrumental music. And it is so annoying and I hate it. Like there's an album that's called, I think it's called The In Sound. It's on Verve as well. It's like a yellow cover with a bunch of circles on it. That is like singularly one of my least favorite jazz albums of all time. I just hate it. I can't listen to it. And there's actually a couple of Gary McFarland records that I hate. So anyway, when this one came up, I thought in the search, I was like, well, let me at least preview it. So I previewed it, and it sounded really good. So in the lineup, in addition to Gary McFarland on vibes, because he's not just the conductor here, he's on vibes. You have Bill Evans on piano, obviously. You've got Jim Hall on guitar, Phil Woods and Spencer Sinatra on reeds, Richard Davis on bass, and Ed Shaughnessy on drums, and then there also are some strings. And this was incidentally recorded at Webster Hall in New York, which I think has produced some pretty good some pretty good albums. So not only do I think the music is great, I think the strings are sparingly used, which is really nice. You really do get some great like Bill Evans features on this throughout, and so that's really nice. But the sound quality, it just sounds really good. And I actually don't recall now off the top of my head if it was ever available in mono, but I made sure to find a stereo copy. And, you know, here, I'm not going to say that this is like the best album I've ever heard, but the fact that I was not aware of it whatsoever, and then because AI suggested it, that I actually went and found this copy, and it was like $10. Like, it wasn't a big investment. I was just kind of like somewhat blown away by how great it was. And I don't know, maybe I should solicit the help from artificial intelligence more frequently. So this next one was a little bit of a blind buy as well, and I was also influenced to purchase it, but not from AI. This one was actually from Downbeat. So I was reading through, I think it was the 1972 Downbeat compilation. So I've showed this on other videos, how I have like all these books of bound Downbeat volumes. Okay, so like every issue from say 1972, 1973, etc. I don't have that many years, but I have, you know, maybe like, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so worth of them. I got them from a collector. I don't think that's something you can just buy off the shelf. So anyway, I was reading one of the editions from 1972, and it gave 5 stars to this album, and I had never heard it before, but I was a big fan of the musician, of the leader. So the album is Albert Dailey, and the title here is The Day After the Dawn. So this was put out on Columbia Records. You can tell that that mine happens to be a promo copy because you've got the timing strip down here. So Albert Dailey is really, really great, but my frame of reference for him wasn't as early as this. In fact, I think the only album that I have by Albert Dailey as a leader anyway is an album called Textures, which was put out on the Muse label in 1981, and it is really, really fantastic. That one happens to be engineered by Rudy Van Gelder, and it has a great lineup with I think it's like Eddie Gladden and Rufus Reed are the make up the trio on Textures. So that one is really good, but again, almost 10 years later. So this one is his debut as a leader, and again, 5-star review. They were kind of remarking in the review, like, what an amazing debut and what a varied selection of music. Like, it basically takes you on a trip is what they said, because there's like classical elements and there's like more avant-garde elements here. It's just very like well-rounded in terms of the material. So in the lineup, we do have another appearance by Richard Davis, like we did on the last one. I'm looking through here to see, like, because on individual tracks you have different lineups. So Roy Haynes is on some of this, Jack Wilkins, let's see, Lisa Atkinson, Percy Heath, Mickey Roker, I'm trying to David Lee on drums. So there's like a variety of folks on here that support him depending on the piece. And again, this is one where I was trusting that 5-star review, got it in, and I was blown away by this one. I was really, really surprised. And again, this is not one that costs very much. I want to say, even though this is a promo copy, I want to say it cost me like $12 or something. So anyway, yeah, I don't know if anybody else, maybe I'm the one who's late to the game and I'm not as familiar with Albert Dailey's work. I've heard him as a supporting artist on some other labels for Muse. Like I said, there's that one that I have, but this was still a pleasant surprise and a record I didn't even know existed. All right, don't worry, not all of these have stories to go with them. So let's go through a few more of these. So this is an interesting one. So Perigeo, it's Italian. I don't know if I'm pronouncing any of these words right, but it's Perigeo and Geneologia. This is on the RCA label. So this would have originally been put out on an Italian label, and this is the US edition. I knew nothing about this record except that I recognized the cover because so many people have posted it on Instagram over the years. So I saw this come up and I clicked on it because I was like, oh yeah, like vague memory. Also, doesn't this just like look like one of those covers that should belong to a super rare record? This record is not super rare. It's just, it kind of has that feel of like private press or something like that, but it isn't. So I was not familiar with the music. I had never heard it before, but I saw this pop up. I saw that it was the US edition, but almost maybe more importantly, it's sealed. So I don't think it was too much of a roll of the dice to decide to buy this and assume that it was the original, but I do believe it's the original based on some of the indicators that I've seen. And funnily enough, I've not unsealed it because I just got it in, but so kind of bad timing, but I have previewed it. In the meantime, I've previewed a few of the tracks. And I'm interested to hear how this is going to sound, because for me, I want to say that it was a little bit more fusion than I expected, but I am still looking forward to unsealing this. It's not that rare of a record that it's a big deal that I'd unseal it. Plus, I don't keep sealed records, generally speaking. So I'm excited to unseal this and listen to that one. And again, I only got it because I was refreshing eBay searches and just recognized the cover. So this is one that I didn't get online. I actually got it in person. How about that? Novel concept. So this is Soul Power by Richard Groove Holmes, and it's on Prestige. So lately, I've been getting more of a sort of soft spot for Johnny Hammond Smith and Richard Groove Holmes. And I don't know if I talked myself into that, or I think I just started getting more and more exposed to some of their music. And these were albums that for all the years that I've been collecting were super cheap. Like when I started collecting, you could get them for $1. And then more recently, maybe up to $10 or something, but still a lot of these are underappreciated in my mind. And I've recently heard some by these artists, like Soul Mist comes to mind. I'm trying to think of some of these others on Prestige that I've gotten in recently and been really impressed by. So I saw this for I think it was $5 at a local shop here in Atlanta. And I got it with a number of other titles, but you have Wally Richardson on it. So that was one of the main reasons I wanted to hear Wally Richardson. He's on lead guitar here. Just because he's such a phenomenal musician, and he kind of like pulled me in, even if Richard Groove Holmes didn't. You also have Steve Wolff on rhythm guitar, Jimmy Lewis on electric bass, Ben Dixon on drums, and Dave Bloom on conga drums. So it's kind of an interesting, like, if you're following, it's organ, lead guitar, rhythm guitar, electric bass, drums, and conga. It's kind of an interesting collection of instruments, and I was just, I was really interested to hear it. Produced by Cal Lampley as well, and obviously Rudy Van Gelder is the engineer. So, you know, like I said, I've been getting more into it. Into his stuff and others. I've also like started DJing a little bit. In fact, I have something coming up in Atlanta, and I've actually found myself pulling in some of these guys' music to play. And so maybe some of that's part of the reason why I'm getting more into it too. All right, so I also have a couple of Riverside titles that I wanted to bring up. So this first one is one that I've been after this forever. Never owned a copy in any format. Jimmy Heath, The Quota. I don't know why. I don't know if it was just harder to find for me or if it's harder to find for everyone, but I'm a big Jimmy Heath fan. He put out a number of sessions for Riverside. Some of them are in a little bit larger format, and some of them are smaller format, and I tend to prefer, as you all know, because I talk about it all the time, tend to prefer smaller format stuff. So on this record, though, you can't mess with this lineup. So you got Freddie Hubbard, Julius Watkins, Jimmy Heath, of course, Cedar Walton, Percy Heath, and Albert Heath, right? So it's the Heath brothers. They tend to travel together on some of these things. So it was recorded in 1961, and there's 4 tracks that are original compositions by Jimmy Heath. Of course, during this time, Freddie Hubbard was on loan from Blue Note Records, so a pretty prolific time for him anyway. And yeah, I was, like I said, I was excited to get it. One thing that I guess to note is you probably saw the stereo badge on the cover, and so this is the black, right, Deep Groove stereo label, which is what it should be. So yeah, and I wasn't specifically looking for the thing. I'm like, for a lot of these, I'm not specifically looking for mono or stereo. It's possible that I may have a preference, especially depending on the year, but a lot of times the price trumps anything. And this was like $25, I think, and it's in great shape. So the next one is also on Riverside, also in stereo. And this one is Julian Priester, Keep Swingin'. So this also has Jimmy Heath on it, Tommy Flanagan, Sam Jones, and Elvin Jones. And yeah, 1960. I have owned this before, but my copy wasn't in great shape, and so I was able to offset the purchase, which again was not very much. I don't think this cost me more than $20, something like that. I'd have to go back and check. I'm just always after deals, and this is what I do, because I'm not just like randomly buying everything, even if it seems like that sometimes. So what I do is I'm looking on eBay, and then if I see something that looks like it's a great price, because I do kind of random searches on eBay, I'll head over to Discogs, where I have my entire collection cataloged finally, and I can check the condition of my existing copy. And so in this case, I saw not only the condition, but my notes that had lots of splits, it had lots of hairlines, and I'm like, let's take this opportunity to finally upgrade. And it like offsets at least half for a lot of these. Like if I'm replacing it with a with a new one, I'm offsetting like at least half the purchase. So that's one of the reasons why I'm maybe so willing to do it. So the next one is also Riverside, and this one is, I think, pretty exciting. So this is Randy Weston. This is a Randy Weston trio plus Cecil Payne. So who is that trio? You've got Ahmed Abdul Malik and Al Dreers. So this is recorded in 1956 in Greenwich Village at the Bohemia. So this is not the only album that was recorded at the Bohemia. What is it? Like there's a Kenny Dorham one on Blue Note. I think there's also a Charles Mingus title that was recorded at the Bohemia. I'm pretty sure that's right. So anyway, it seemed to be a popular venue early on. And the cool part about this one is that it is an original pressing, and what that means for 1956 and Riverside is that it is a white label with blue kind of Reels logo, and just exceptional shape. Whenever you come across one of these white label Riverside records that's in great shape, it's just surprising because of how many you come across that are not. So anyway, those are the 3 Riverside records, and I think this Randy Weston is the pick of the bunch. All right, so one more sort of single title, then I want to show you the titles that I got in from the my order from Japan, and then I'll show you those 2 books, then we're done. So if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see that I just posted this, and it is Kenny Burrell's Soul Call. So this is in stereo, and here's the thing about this record. When I saw this, like a few years ago, before I knew what it was, I thought, oh, this is surely some sort of, I don't know, like reissue of one of his earlier records. They retitled it and it still says Kenny Burrell and that's that, right? Because it just has the feel of a later session, but it's also, you know, it's like laminated cover. It just kind of feels like the fact that it's in stereo and it has that text for the stereo, it just feels like it's something that they decided to reissue and that this is not actually original, but it is original. So this came out in 1964, which is far from a great time for prestige. I mean, not across the board. What I mean by that is not in terms of the music, just in terms of some of the pressing quality because of how much was being put out on recycled vinyl. And yeah, I wasn't even really aware, I guess, that Kenny Burrell was still doing much for prestige in 1964. So on this record, you've got Will Davis on piano. That was an interesting name. I think he's somebody that Kenny Burrell knew from Detroit because they're both from there. You also have Martin Rivera on bass, Bill English on drums, and Ray Barretto on conga. So a couple of these folks are from the album Midnight Blue that Kenny Burrell put out for Blue Note. And yeah, so despite the fact that it says Soul Call, this is not just a collection of soul music. In fact, it's basically what you would expect from Kenny Burrell. It's a lot of blues forward stuff, a lot of great soloing. There's nothing that seems like it's just kind of throwaway tracks or too overly poppy kind of stuff. It's really, really good. I'm a big fan of this. And so to my earlier point about this DJ thing, one of my favorite tracks in this is, which is it? It's Mark 1, and I'm probably going to include that in my next set because as soon as I heard this, you know, this for the first time, the whole album, I was like, wow, this is some great stuff, and that's a great track. So let's get into some of the Japanese titles, and all of these titles that I got from Japan are Japanese titles, at least in terms of where they were manufactured. So I'm trying to think how best to do this, because if you've ever ordered from Japan, what you'll know is basically anytime you do it, the outer sleeve has that like flap with the sticky stuff on the side, and so it's a pain in the butt to get them out of it. So I'm going to try to show you these without actually taking it out of the shrink. We'll see if you get too much reflection. So the first one that I'm going to show you is Mal Waldron, Spanish Bitch. So this, what you'll notice about this record is that it says ECM on it. And so your first thought, if you don't know kind of some of the history of this album, your first thought might be, that's a Japanese reissue of an ECM title. Actually, no. So this was recorded for ECM, but never released by ECM. It was released for the first time in Japan in this edition right here. And so it's pretty hard to get because in its original form, it basically only came out in Japan and not in the US and not in some of these other countries. And so it can be a hard one to get and correspondingly has a, typically a somewhat high price. Although this title, this particular album, because it doesn't have the obi, so that's another thing that I found ordering from Japan is that if it's ever missing an insert or if it's missing the obi, then typically you can get a pretty good deal because I think that Japanese buyers are more interested in having the complete package than either US buyers or at least than I am. So I was super excited to get this for the deal that I got, and finding this title from this particular seller was the reason why I put together this whole order of five records? Yeah, 5 records. Because, well, if you're spending like $30 in shipping, you might as well see if there's something else in the in the seller's shopping marketplace or whatever on Discogs that you want to add as well. All right, so the next one that I got in from that same seller is titled Salaam Salaam by Takehiro Honda. Sorry, I'm trying to look and make sure that it's not too much glare, and hopefully it isn't. So what about this record? Well, it was put out on Eastwind, which is a fantastic label. I would say that almost every title that I've ever heard that was on Eastwind sounds phenomenal in terms of like engineering. But guess what? Fortunately for us, the music is great as well. And obviously the cover is as well. So, you know, complete package on this thing. So let me take a quick look, because sometimes I have to read some of these off, especially because of difficult pronunciations, and so they don't stick in my mind. But in addition to Takehiro Honda, we have Juni Booth on bass, Eric Gravatt on drums. So I think that's it on this one. So fantastic trio album anyway, and again, very well engineered. This is one that like I'd seen the cover before, and that was almost like something that pulled me in. There's a variety of these Eastwind titles that have just amazing covers that are super punchy, like high, like, you know, super bright colors and like high contrast photos and that kind of stuff. So anyway, I like just got these in also, so I haven't fully digested or even heard all of this music. So forgive me. So this next one is also one that I was really excited about, and admittedly, this is not a original, and I knew that going in, but I actually prefer this cover anyway. So this is by the 4 Units, is what they go by or went by. And what you'll see is a hand holding on to some sort of fish. If I was a fisherman, then I'd be able to tell you definitively that's a trout or something. It's probably a trout, right? So who is on this album? Well, who are the 4 Units? So it's Akira Miyazawa is the leader, and he is a little bit of a mysterious sort of character in Japanese jazz music. There's not that much that's known about him. He kind of was on the scene and very influential for a lot of early Japanese jazz musicians. And then he left the scene, and then he kind of came back, and yeah, he just wasn't working consistently, but he put out some just absolutely amazing albums. So the most famous one that he put out is titled Bull Trout. So you've probably seen reissues of that one before, or if you haven't, definitely look it up, again by Akira Miyazawa, titled Bull Trout. So what you'll notice is that there's a lot of fish references. In fact, there's one other album where it's like him fly fishing on the front. So in addition to Akira Miyazawa on this, we have Yasuo Arakawa. We also have Masahiko Togashi. And then finally, we have Masahiko Sato. So Togashi and Sato are both more familiar to me than the other musicians. I don't know if that's a fair statement. Well, it has to be a fair statement because it's just what's familiar to me. But I want to say that I recognize those musicians from appearing on Three Blind Mice labels, which is a fantastic record label that actually is the record label of these other 2 that I got in. So I need to do a whole video on Three Blind Mice at some point, because I'm a passionate fan of that label. I've got just dozens of their titles, because like everything that they put out is phenomenal. So one of the titles that I got in on Three Blind Mice is by Terumasa Hino. So this is the Terumasa Hino Quintet, and is titled simply Live, I believe. So this is recorded live in Tokyo. And I want to say it's a little bit more adventurous. Hino did really a variety of styles, from more pop to sort of like almost like disco and funk. But he also did free jazz, and he did hard bop. And so it's like this varied catalog that I don't know, if you don't like some of the styles of music, you have to like make sure you know what you're getting into. All right. So the last one that I got is this. So this one, and it's going to be hard to read, so I apologize. I'm going to tell you who it is, though. So this is by Fumio Karashima. This is the Fumio Karashima Trio, and the album is titled Gathering. So this is also on the Three Blind Mice label. Everything that Karashima does, especially for Three Blind Mice, is absolutely fantastic. And so this is one that I've been looking for a while and was excited to get. And, you know, listen, like you've seen some of these. They don't come with the obies. A lot of them do come with the inserts, though. And I don't really care about the obies. They get in the way. That's my opinion. So anyway, I was, just super excited that I was able to get not only that Waldron title, which is kind of what brought me in, but then I saw everything else they were selling, and I just got super excited. All right, we've basically come to the end of this video. I wanted to close with 2 books. Not everybody's interested in some of these jazz-specific books, but some of you are, and I don't know, maybe somebody didn't know that one of these existed, and now you have something to keep an eye out for at your used bookstore. So I was very excited to finally get a copy of this. So this is The Blue Note Years, the Jazz Photography of Francis Wolff. So Francis Wolff, I think as many of us know, was the photographer for so many Blue Note albums. And yeah, like this whole thing is just his photography. Like it's super picture heavy, right? Throughout, there isn't that much text. So you do kind of have to be like sort of just in awe of the pictures. But I think he wanted the pictures to speak for themselves. And so that's what you have. There's like some text in here, but it's kind of limited. Here's kind of a fun one, right? I really like this one. Who is that? That is Milt Hinton, actually. So Milt Hinton, funnily enough, he's holding a camera. Milt Hinton was essentially a competitor of Francis Wolff. He took a ton of photos. I'm trying to remember, he did at least some for Bethlehem. I can't remember who else he was taking photos for. And it may not have always been for like big labels. I think he might have done it for like journalists and that kind of stuff. But he was a very prolific photographer as well. So that's kind of cool. I just saw that. So excited to dive into that. And then the other one is also a photography book, and this is by Burt Goldblatt. So this is profiling the Newport Jazz Festival, over 300 photos. And what it is it basically goes through the Newport Jazz Festival from, I want to say, like 1954 to 1974, something like that. And in contrast with the Francis Wolff book, there's actually a lot of text here. So accompanying the photos, which to be fair, are not like as nicely presented in terms of the photos, but there's a lot of text that talks about what happened at the Newport Jazz Festival for each year. And then they throw in, and then Burt Goldblatt, who attended all of these and, photographed them. And that was like one of his things in addition to, taking photos for album covers. Like all of these up in my room are by Burt Goldblatt. He would sell these to newspapers and stuff. And so he was not only doing them, designing covers, he was also, taking essentially commercial photography. And so I've been after this book for a while. I actually do have another book by Burt Goldblatt that is super cool. So again, another one to maybe keep an eye out for in the event it ever pops up. So there you have it. I mean, kind of a standard New Rivals video. I sort of had writer's block on topics for making a video, and it had been like a week. And so this is kind of what I went with, but I think I have some better ideas now that I've had some time to think about it. And I have some like complex videos that I'm going to try to make, and complex in terms of like the research that I need to do before I can like actually get in front of the camera to deliver them. So anyway, I appreciate your patience if anybody has been just, waiting for my next video. But here you have it. Thanks again for tuning in, and look out for some of these videos probably coming up in the next week. So thanks very much. I'll see you next time.